It's Leo season. Welcome back, cuties. Today we are going to be talking about the astrology horoscope for the month of July 2024. I collect all of the transits that I think are going to impact business owners the most, and I talk about them here. If you want a breakdown of every single transit that's happening every week, I post those on Monday on my social medias, which is Instagram and TikTok. The link is in the description below. Transits that I talk about here are a bit more geared towards business owners, and the transits that I talk about on my social media, a bit more open for everybody. And just a quick reminder that always with astrology, it is an energy forecast, which means that this energy is available for people to use. It doesn't mean that it's a guarantee that these things will happen. First of all, things that happen in your personal chart always trump what's happening collectively, which is what I talk about in this video. Secondly, just because the energy is available doesn't mean we grab it and use it. Astrology requires us to meet it halfway. However, I think it's really important to know whether it impacts us on an individual level or not. There's going to be a lot of people around you who are feeling this way. So we as business owners who are putting ourselves, putting our products, putting our services out to the collective, it's kind of nice to know these things. All right, let's get started. Starting the month off is Neptune stationing retrograde. This happens on July 2nd. Now, Neptune retrograde isn't really that big of a deal because it's retrograding for 5 or 6 months of every single year. So it's literally half the time. Anytime we get a retrograde, it's a moment to look at the themes of that planet and look at them inwardly. So when we're looking at Neptune, we're looking at things regarding spirituality, creativity. This is when I say creativity, I mean more of like channeled creativity. Venus has some creativity as well too, but that's more like what we value, how our values go into what we create, versus with Neptune, it's more like what we're called to create. I don't know if that makes sense. Neptune is also the planet of no bounds. So, it's where we find our imagination because we go beyond the box, we go beyond the bounds. So when we're looking at Neptune retrograde, it's a great time to turn inside and look at where have I been, a little out there, where has that benefited me, and where could I, reel it back in a little bit and, create some boundaries a little bit more. Neptune retrograde is also a moment to uncover a little bit of creativity that may be locked inside of you somewhere. Again, it's a long span, half the year. So as we end this year, kind of start to turn inward and go under the layers and see if there's any, hidden talents that you have been putting off to the side. Now, this Neptune retrograde is an interesting one because it's happening in the sign of Pisces. It's happening in the last sign of Pisces. So the 29th degree of any degree is known as a critical degree or an anaretic degree. And it's the very last degree of any sign. The reason it's critical is because it's kind of like a culmination of all of the lessons, all of the energy, all of the experience that you've gathered throughout the whole transition of that sign. It's definitely a rather intense degree of any sign. Neptune is almost done with its transit in Pisces. It will move out of Pisces next year. However, when it goes retrograde next year, it will dip back into Pisces. Yes, into the 29th degree. So I kind of like to think of this as like the beginning of a cycle where we can check back in next year when it retrogrades. It does so at the later half of next year. In January of 2026, it moves into Aries for good. So from now until the end of next year, it's definitely a cycle regarding our creativity, our imagination, our lack of boundaries, and our spirituality. So it's a very good time to see what house Neptune is transiting for you, what house is ruled by Pisces in your chart. Neptune moved into Pisces in 2011. So just think of the time from 2011 to, we're still going through it. So the end of next year, just kind of think about, what are some things that you've learned in terms of your spirituality, your creativity, anything that's really confused you, anywhere where you've been a little checked out of this world, so to speak. Just reflect on that. Now's a good time to do so. As for business owners, you can use this period to make sure that your business goals align with your spirituality, align with your imagination, align with your creativity, and be open to creative inspiration, something that maybe you haven't done before. The next few months are a good time to just try it and see where it goes. That same day, July 2nd, Mercury moves into Leo, which is the beginning of Leo season for us. Okay, it's the first planet that's going to go into Leo, and Mercury will be here until July 25th. Mercury in Leo energy in general is bold, it's dramatic, it's fun, it's playful. It represents children. It represents, playfulness of children as well. Self-expression, reasons why you deserve to be in the spotlight. And with Mercury ruling our mind and communication, there is energy for creative thinking, bold thinking, innovative ideas, expressive communication, perhaps fabulous theatrics, maybe. People will be very enthusiastic and confident right now, especially as we get more planets moving into the sign of Leo. It's not necessarily the time to be arguing or convincing people of your point, because this is the collective energy. So everybody is going to want to be in the spotlight right now. So yes, we're all confident, but if you only want the spotlight to be on you, other people are going to be annoyed because they want the spotlight on them too. So take your time to shine and then pass on the spotlight. Let your passion for what you're doing shine through. As for business owners, it's a wonderful time to film some evergreen content, meaning content that can live on your page for however long, especially if you are the one in the video. I think that's going to do really well right now. If you've ever been thinking about creating a promo video or behind the scenes, something a little bit bigger than, your average social media posts. Maybe you hire a production team if you've been thinking about doing something like that. Now is absolutely the time. Leo season, yes. It's also a really good time to execute a really important presentation, anything where you're up there in the spotlight, kind of showing off your business. This is a really good time to do so. Your communication is going to be on point, besides a couple transits that I'm about to talk about. But they're at the beginning, don't worry. Also, if you didn't do so in Cancer season, where we were getting a little bit more personal, Leo season is a really good time to tell your story. Why did you create this business? Why are you an excellent choice in the market? Things like that. All right, starting Mercury and Leo off strong, we have Mercury opposite Pluto. This is happening on July 3rd. Yes, this is one of those transits I was talking about that's not so lovely. Any opposition you get, that means that the two planets are standing across the sky from each other. And they're kind of doing this push-pull conversation. I want this, no, I want this. And they're learning how to kind of be opposite, but at the same time, take up space together. So Mercury is about communication, short travel, our minds, and Pluto is about power dynamics, real transformations, the psyche. And so with these two signs standing across from each other, both of them being in fixed signs, there's going to be some tension here. Okay, there's going to be some intensity, as Pluto always brings. It could bring up some interesting power dynamics in the way we communicate, in the way that we think. It's not, like I said, it's not necessarily a lovely transit, but I think it might teach some valuable lessons before we go into full-blown Leo season, where we're kind of in the spotlight, making sure that we understand how to take up space without taking it from somebody else. Mercury opposite Pluto can be intense, but it can also bring upon deeper conversations that might be necessary to be had. Deeper or intense conversations, or maybe even intensive thinking. As for business owners, it's a really good day to note that communications just might be intense. So if you have a team that you're leading, you may want to go into those communications just knowing this, lighten things up a little bit, lighten up your approach. This is a transit where people may call you out on your BS. So don't air your laundry if you aren't ready to have people question it. Any frustrations that do come up during this time, just look at them as a tool for you to reflect upon what can change, because Pluto does bring that energy for transformation. So we're talking growth. I mean, as is life on this planet, but especially with Pluto. Then on July 5th, we have a new moon in Cancer. The new moon in Cancer gives us a fresh start, a fresh cycle on all things that make us feel at home, on the things that we want to nurture, on the things that we want to care for, our emotions. With everything that's happening, I think this new moon is telling us to tap into our emotions and use them as a tool rather than necessarily a guide point, if that makes sense. So when we're feeling all sorts of ways, we don't need to approach it with judgment. Instead, we can approach it with curiosity. There are two exact transits happening with this new moon. The first one is Mars sextile to Saturn. This is a harmonious transit, and so I feel like it's going to give the energy we need to take action towards serious action towards our long-term goals. We might feel called to step up and take responsibility for what it is that we need to do to get there. The other transit that's happening is Chiron square to Venus. Now, this is not so much of a harmonious transit. However, when we have squares, it brings a little bit of tension, it brings a little bit of challenge that we might need to make the changes that we need to move forward. So when we have Chiron and when we have Venus, Chiron represents our deepest wounds, our healing, and Venus represents our value systems, what we find beautiful, our finances, our relationships. And so when these two are in a conversation of tension, it does make us a little bit more sensitive, especially in our relationships, and especially with our self-worth. So this is not really a new moon to be judging yourself. Again, I think it's a beautiful full moon to be getting curious, and leaving the judgment. I was going to say for another day, but just leave it. Big task. Next up, we have Venus entering the sign of Leo. This happens on July 11th, where she shall stay until August 4th. Another planet entering Leo, getting us really ramped up for Leo season. Venus in Leo shifts our values, our relationships, our finances into a stage of self-expression, into a stage of creativity, into a stage of confidence, which is nice to have after that Chiron square to Venus transit. We value all of these things in our relationships specifically and our personal financial decisions. This is a time when we might even find ourselves to be more charismatic, more bold. We might think of ourselves as being more of those things at this time. It's also a time when we are valuing leadership. In what areas of your life do you want to step up and become a leader? What areas of your life do you admire somebody else to be the leader in the way that they lead? Could you create space for other people to be the leader? Be mindful of overspending and overindulgence during these few weeks. As for business owners, this is a great time to focus on bold and out there marketing campaigns. People are going to be really appreciative of things that are kind of different and confident and make them smile, and make them go, what was that? I liked that. There is absolutely a sense of magnetism through authenticity. I feel like that's always somewhat true. However, it's especially true as we have all these planets moving through the sign of Leo. So with that, don't be afraid to step outside the box and differentiate yourself from others. People are going to be really attuned to that right now. On July 12th, we have Jupiter trine the North Node. Both Jupiter and the North Node represent growth in somewhat different ways. Jupiter represents growth and expansion, in terms of like philosophy and things that we learn about just being a human in general. The North Node is more like evolutionary growth, like how you grow toward, some people say it's your destiny. I don't vibe with that word that much. If you do, great. It's more for growth that is designed for your journey on this planet. It's more personalized towards what you're supposed to learn. We all have different lessons that we're here to learn. So that's to me what the North Node represents. So when these two come together in a harmonious conversation, to me that says there's going to be a really lovely opportunity for aligned growth. And not in the let me present you with a bunch of challenges and slap you in the face kind of way, but instead maybe a pleasant situation or a pleasant experience where you're like, oh my God, I need to do this more. This has taught me so much. What a lovely event. What a lovely day. What a lovely idea. North Node also represents connections, where we're making connections that are impactful connections. Jupiter is also very social. And so with these two together, I feel like it might be a really opportune time to do some networking, to meet somebody new that might have a true impact on your life. Jupiter is also very optimistic. It's very fun and bubbly. And so great time to put yourself out there, especially with all this energy we have in Leo. I think it's just going to be a fun month. We feel Jupiter transits for, I would say, about 2 to 3 weeks-ish, because it's a bigger planet. It moves a little bit slower. Obviously, the day of exactitude, and then maybe a week or two leading up to it and after. As for business owners, utilize this transit to connect with other business owners. I think that if we can share our experiences and share our practices with others, we are really going to learn a lot from them. Really good, like I said, really good transit for networking, going on a retreat, joining a round table, even if it's online, something like that, where you can get talking to other like minds, or any other way that you can connect with business owners or even your customers. Any way that you can learn, talk to people and learn from them, it's a great opportunity for that. All that fun is paired with a Venus opposite to Pluto transit on the same day on July 12th. Now, Venus transits we don't feel the intensity for as long as a Jupiter transit. So maybe right on this day, you don't need to launch anything. But, leading up to it, maybe a few days after, go ahead. Now, let's talk about Venus opposite Pluto. This, again, Pluto always brings the intensity. Pluto brings the defensiveness, especially when we have a opposition, this push-pull kind of energy. With Venus representing the things that we value, our value systems, and Pluto on the other side, talking about power dynamics, subconscious, big transformation. There may be some back and forth energy regarding what we value and the power systems that go around that. Pluto also has to do with survival skills and survival instincts, and Venus has to do with our sense of security. So those things aren't necessarily working in harmony together. So that's just feel icky all around. It can also bring obsessive and compulsion type energy towards our relationships. So just make sure you're being very clear about your boundaries. Be very cautious about putting yourself in any unsafe situations. Obviously anytime, but especially during this day and a few days around, it's easier to fall into things that we didn't really notice before. Things happen kind of fast. So just be super aware on and around this day. We can also get really obsessive and compulsive with our finances. So either like obsessing about how much things cost, making spreadsheets, going a little bit too far into finances or making money, or spending too much money, being impulsive. So if you don't have money to spend, don't go to the store. Don't open that online shop. As for business owners, be super cautious about financial decisions around this date. There could be some transformations regarding your finances, for better or for worse. Plan, have backups, avoid taking any unnecessary financial risks for 2 to 3 days on either side of this transit. Lastly, again, anytime we have Pluto, it brings the passion. Venus does add a touch of creativity. So if you're feeling a little woo-woo in the brain, then I would suggest having a passion project ready to go on this day as well. On July 15th, we have Mars conjunct Uranus. Expect the unexpected. When it comes to our desires, when it comes to the way we assert ourselves, we are going to be a bit more focused on the things that liberate us, on the things that give us independence, on the things that are different, on the things that make us unique. I will say that the urge to be impulsive is also heightened with this. Sometimes, though, this is not necessarily a square. These two planets are coming together and they're working together in the same space. So to me, this shows that, you know, whatever you are impulsive towards, just, I mean, obviously think about it, make sure it's not going to F up your life. Whatever that impulse is, lean into it for just a little bit once you've checked in that it's safe and that it's okay and that it's good for you. And just see where it goes, because it may lead you to something that will really help you out. Sometimes it leads to mistakes, and that's okay. In the very least, you can learn that that's definitely not the thing for you, and you could be super sure of that. As for business owners, I always take note of Uranus transits because things go a little unexpected. So if you have a really big project that a bunch of teammates are coming together on this day, just be really aware of this and be flexible for the timing, for things not starting on time, for someone not showing up. Just kind of be aware of things going a little wonky. However, this is a really good time for implementing new technology. Uranus rules technology, and with Mars bringing some assertiveness, it's a really good time to be taking action towards technology. So if there's some automation tools that you've been looking at, or a new operations platform that you've been wanting to integrate, this is a really good time to do that, especially if that tool is going to give you more freedom and more of your time back. Yes, the universe is screaming yes to all of that. A few days after this connection with Uranus, Mars moves into the sign of Gemini, where it will stay from July 20th all the way until September 4th. So we are riding this energy for the rest of summer. Gemini energy in general is pretty fast paced. It's moving around. It has to do with the mind. So things are rapid. Okay, we're moving fast. When Mars moves into the sign of Gemini, we're taking quick action. We are being assertive. We are moving fast. We're actually doing fast. It energizes our communications and our mental abilities. We might also become a little bit better at multitasking or doing a variety of tasks or being very versatile with the things that we're doing at this time. So if you have multiple projects coming up, don't worry, you're going to get a little surge of energy that are going to help you get through it. It can lead to a sense of restlessness and impatience. As for business owners, this period is a really good time for writing persuasive pieces or content. It's yet another great transit for networking, as Gemini rules social interactions and activities. And so putting ourselves out there in terms of meeting other people, we're going to have the energy to do that more so than otherwise. Our social batteries might be able to stay charged a little bit longer than usual. This is also a really good time to focus on project management. What are your project management strategies? Are you a good project manager? If you're not, acknowledge that, own that. That's totally fine. There's people out there who can help you. What projects need attention? Where could you hire some help? How do you balance multiple projects at once? What can you automate? This is a good time to be focusing on that aspect, because things can go haywire very quickly with Gemini, especially with Mars and Gemini. So it's a really just good time to ground down before things get too out of hand. Lastly, I think it's a really good time to host a workshop or launch a course or anything where people can take action towards learning something new. They're going to be hungry for wanting something new, learning something new. Their curiosity will be piqued. On July 21st, we have the second full moon in Capricorn that we have experienced this year. The last full moon we had was in Capricorn. It was at the first degree of Capricorn. The moon travels about 28.5 degrees before the next full moon. So that is why we are getting a second full moon in Capricorn, which is happening at 29 degrees of Capricorn. Now, as I mentioned before in this video, the 29th degree is a critical degree, okay? It's a culmination of everything that has happened in that sign before. So yes, we have another thing happening in the 29th degree. It's a critical moment, okay? Because right now, Pluto is in the sign of Aquarius. However, in November, Pluto is going to be retrograding back into the sign of Capricorn, where it will retrograde to the 29th degree before finally, when it goes forward again, staying in Aquarius for the rest of this transit. Don't worry, it's not going to dip back into Capricorn again. However, I do think because we have a few things going around, a second Capricorn moon happening in the 29th degree of Capricorn, to me, this tells me that there are some things that we as society are learning about the energy of Capricorn. We are coming to a culmination of all things Capricorn. What does Capricorn represent? It represents status. It represents responsibility. It represents ambition. Now, that's more on an individualistic scale. On a societal scale, this can manifest as systems, institutions, corporations, economies, hierarchies, all these things that kind of structure our society. And so I would say, over the past 20 years and far beyond that, I mean, I guess always, we're really taking a look at our position with those. So when we come to the moon, that's more of our inner self, our emotions. I feel like it's a very personal, it's not a planet, luminary. So when it's passing through the sun, I feel like we're looking at what our roles and our attachments are to these systems. When we're looking at Pluto, it's the most outer planet that we're looking at. So it's absolutely a societal planet. And so I think as it's going to move back into the 29th degree, that's looking at what we as a society, how we're attached to these systems, how we function off of these systems. Both of these things happening in the same year, I feel like is an important part of this year's energy because it asks us individually, how are we involved? And it asks us as a society, how are we involved? What are our parts in it on both sides? Where can we let go of things to create space for the new? On July 22nd, the sun joins Venus and Mercury in Leo. Happy birthday, Leo suns. The sun will be here until August 23rd. The sun is the happiest when it's in Leo, which means that the sun can fulfill all of its energies to the fullest. The sun in astrology represents the self, parts of the ego, the way you express yourself, why you deserve to shine, right? And that's all what Leo is screaming about. With this, there is a continued surge of energy and confidence during this entire season. We might experience increased motivation and enthusiasm. Freaking go with it. It doesn't happen all year long, so roll with it, baby. Ensure you're balancing this energy out, the spotlight energy with some humility. Yes, it's awesome to feel fabulous, but like I mentioned before, we're all going to be feeling fabulous and wanting the spotlight. So there may be, a little bit of jealousy if someone's taking the spotlight for a little bit too long. So have your moment, pass it along. As for business owners, again, continued energy towards getting recognized, putting yourself out there, focusing on your creative projects, absolutely brand storytelling. I think it's also a really good time to put your money into advertisements and boosted posts, product launches, anything like that. Anything that shows off your business. Just like Mercury and Venus, the first thing that the sun is going to do once it enters Leo season is stand in opposition with Pluto. This is happening on July 22nd. If you haven't picked up by now, that's because Pluto is in the sign of Aquarius, which is opposite the sign of Leo, and it's right at the beginning there. So the first thing any planet does right now when it touches down into Leo is make an opposition to Pluto. As mentioned before, oppositions to Pluto brings intensity. It's not necessarily easygoing and pleasant. However, it generally brings forth the challenges that we need to make the changes for transformation for the better. I like to say that we learn the lessons right in the beginning so the rest of Leo season can be more fun and playful. Pluto is in the sign of Aquarius, which is more about humanitarianism, masses of people, while Leo is more about me, more about the individual. That's why they're on the opposite sides of the spectrum. However, they're very much related, right? You can't have a group of people without a bunch of individuals. So this is going to have some push-pull energy about how you show up. Check in with your humanity. Are you showing humanity? Are you focusing on yourself and your needs too much? This transit is going to let you know. I do want to mention that, again, these are fixed signs, which means that we might feel a little resistant to the change at first, and that's okay. Like, be annoyed, whatever, be annoyed, but then be open to the changes. This transit also shines a light onto our subconscious, onto our psyche. So if there's any deep patterns in there or trauma in there that you didn't really realize was there, the sun is going to do its thing and shine some light on it. Just good, because we need to be aware before we can change things. It also brings a surge of energy for potential domination, I want to say, compulsive, obsessive energies. So if you're feeling the need to take over, be very aware of that. Take a step back and use this as a tool and a moment to ask why instead of moving forward with that action. Like, I feel like I really need to take control of this situation. Why is that? Is that a me thing? Is that because no one is controlling the situation? Just observe, get curious about what's going on. As for business owners, especially because this happens when the sun is in Leo, I think this is a really good time to check in with your leadership strategies and skills. If you have a team, reflect on the ways that you're leading them and managing them. Where can you trust your teammates more? Where can you set up more accountability? Where can you explain more or give more context or give more guidance? For solopreneurs, where do you give others too much power? Where do you belittle yourself because you feel you're not good enough? For example, are you giving too much power to how many likes you're getting on a social media post? Meaning, if you're not getting enough likes, that means that you're not going to be creating anymore, even though you really love to create. How can you shift that and have your confidence be towards creating regardless of the response that you're getting? The very last transit I will be talking about in this video is Mercury moving into the sign of Virgo. And this happens on July 25th, where it will stay until August 15th. Mercury loves Virgo. Mercury rules Virgo. Every planet rules 2 signs. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. Virgo is all about the little details. Virgo is about getting analytical. Our mind and communication gets a dose of organization and efficiency. It's a great time to organize a content calendar or email marketing strategy, or figure out practical solutions to ongoing issues that you've been having, especially when it comes to operations or providing services to your team or other people. Virgo also rules health and wellness. So the collective, may be thinking about these things more and taking them more seriously. So if you are in the health and wellness sector, this is your time to shine. We will have Venus and the sun moving into Virgo in the upcoming weeks into August. So really start prepping things now so that you can be ready when people's interests are really piqued about your field. As for business owners, now is a really great time to get lost in the data. If you're someone who gets really overwhelmed by analytics, this is a time to step into it. And maybe you hire somebody who is really good at reading the analytics that can help you understand them and make action based on those. Or if you've never looked at them before, maybe just figuring out a way to have a relationship with the data that doesn't overwhelm you and doesn't mean you need to change your entire strategy, but just a way to give you a little tidbit of information of what direction you can go in next. Decide what you do care about, decide what you don't care about. Maybe social media likes don't matter, but what matters instead is how much traffic you're getting to your website from your Instagram. Funnels, Yes, funnels is now a good time to set up a funnel, even like a really obscure one, even if it's on a piece of paper, understanding the journey of your customer and figuring out a way to track the analytics on that. Something really simple. Lastly, again, like I mentioned before, it's just a really good time to get organized. Digital organizing, just anything that requires a lot of like little details that maybe you don't really have the patience for. You'll have a little bit more patience for that in the next few weeks. That's it. That's all I have for the month of July. Just a reminder that if you want all of the transits happening in July, make sure you come follow me on Instagram or TikTok, where every Monday I make a post about every single transit that's happening for this week. If you want this information to your inbox, so you don't have to wait for the notification or be reminded that this is out, then sign up for my newsletter, where you'll get an email with this video directly to your inbox. And if you don't want to hear me blab for however long this video is, then you can just read it in a 10-minute blog post, or do both. Have the blog post there, watch the video. We love notes. Come back for the August horoscope geared towards business owners. We'll see you next month.